For more original stories, subscribe to Audio Tales. Now, let's begin this one. The pristine white envelope lay on the polished mahogany table of the solicitor's office like a declaration of war. Liam Walker stared at it, then at his wife, Chloe, seated opposite him. Her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed mask of neutrality that he'd come to despise over the past few strained months. Their solicitor, a woman named Ms. Davies with an air of brisk efficiency, cleared her throat. "Mr. Walker, these are the divorce papers as filed by Mrs. Walker. I trust you've had a chance to review the initial draft your own counsel sent over regarding asset division. Today, we're primarily here to discuss the particulars of Mrs. Walker's petition, specifically regarding dependents." Dependents? Liam almost snorted. That was a laugh. After 10 years of marriage, a decade filled with what he had thought was mutual respect and a quiet, comfortable love. The one thing they hadn't managed to have, despite trying, was a child. It had been a silent sorrow between them, a tender point they'd eventually stopped discussing, the unspoken understanding being that their life would be just the two of them. So, when Ms. Davies continued, Liam was expecting a quick, formal dismissal of that section. "Mrs. Walker is petitioning for sole legal and physical custody of Leo Hayes, aged 5, Ms. Davies stated, her gaze flicking towards Chloe, then back to Liam. Liam blinked. He felt a slow, creeping confusion. Like icy water seeping into his shoes, he must have misheard. "I'm sorry," he said, a small, disbelieving laugh escaping him. "Leo. Who? Did you say aged 5? He looked at Chloe, expecting her to correct the solicitor, to explain some bizarre clerical error. But Chloe simply stared back, her jaw set, that infuriating mask still firmly in place. "Leo Hayes, Mr. Walker," Ms. Davies reiterated, a slight frown now creasing her brow. "Mrs. Walker's son." The room seemed to tilt. Liam's heart began to hammer against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "Her son?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. We don't have a son. We don't have any children. Chloe, what is she talking about?" Chloe finally spoke, her voice as cold and sterile as the room itself. "Leo is my son, Liam, and I am asking for full custody. Your son?" Liam felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up. "Chloe, have you lost your mind? This isn't funny. Who is Leo? Is this some kind of sick joke? A tactic to get more money out of the settlement?" He knew, even as he said it, that it sounded desperate, unhinged, but the alternative was unthinkable. "He is not a joke, Liam," Chloe said, her eyes, for the first time, flashing with a spark of emotion, anger, or perhaps defensiveness. "He is very real. And he is my priority." Liam leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles were white. "If he's real, Chloe, then who is he? Where has he been for the past 5 years? How could you have a 5-year-old son that I know nothing about? We've been married for 10 years. The questions tumbled out, a torrent of disbelief and dawning horror. A 5-year-old. That meant, while they were married, while they were sharing a bed, a life, Chloe had conceived, carried, and birthed a child. a child that wasn't his. A child she had kept secret. Bitsinges. Davies intervened, her voice a calming balm that did little to soothe the inferno raging within Liam. Mr. Walker, perhaps this is a discussion best had privately between you and Mrs. Walker, or through your respective counsels at a later date. For today, we merely need to acknowledge the petition. Acknowledge it? Liam stood up abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. Acknowledge that my wife has apparently been living a double life and has a secret child? A child she now wants custody of in our divorce, as if this is some perfectly normal line item? He gestured wildly towards the papers. No, I don't acknowledge it. I don't understand it. Chloe, you need to tell me what's going on. Right now. Chloe's gaze dropped. She picked at an imaginary thread on her skirt. There's nothing more to say here, Liam. My solicitor has the details. Leo exists. He's my son. I want him. With that, she stood, gave a curt nod to Miss Davies, and walked out of the room, leaving Liam standing there, pole-axed, the words Leo Hayes, aged 5, echoing in the deafening silence of his shattered reality. His marriage wasn't just ending. It was being revealed as a monstrous, intricate lie. And at the heart of it was a child he never knew existed. A child whose name was now the key to unlocking a betrayal so profound it threatened to swallow him whole. Who was Leo Hayes? And what other secrets had Chloe been hiding in the carefully constructed facade of their life together? The questions burned in his mind, the start of a desperate, painful quest for answers that he knew, instinctively, would change him forever. He had to find out. He had to understand how the woman he'd loved and trusted for a decade could have hidden not just an affair, but an entire human being from him. The days that followed were a blur of raw, agonizing emotion. Liam moved like a ghost through the motions of his life. His architectural firm, his meticulously ordered apartment that now felt like a stranger's home. Sleep was a battlefield, his mind replaying Chloe's cold words, her averted gaze, the solicitor's calm pronouncement of a name. Leo Hayes. Each repetition was a fresh stab of betrayal. He'd called his own lawyer, Jessica Albright, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had listened to his choked, incredulous story with a mixture of professional sympathy and steely resolve. This is unusual, Liam. I'll grant you that, Jessica had said, her voice pragmatic over the phone, but not entirely unheard of in contentious divorces. Sometimes people invent things to gain leverage or inflict pain. Or, she'd paused, sometimes there are secrets, deep ones. Is she insane, Jessica? Liam had asked, rubbing his temples. To think she could just drop this bomb? A 5-year-old? Where was he? Who looked after him while she was with me, playing the devoted wife? The sarcasm dripped from his voice. His mind became a relentless detective, sifting through the wreckage of their 10 years together, searching for clues he must have missed. Chloe, a freelance marketing consultant, had always had a somewhat erratic schedule. Client meetings that ran late, sudden, weekend conferences, trips to network or research trends. He'd never questioned them. Why would he? He'd trusted her implicitly. She was Chloe, his calm, intelligent, slightly reserved Chloe. Not the kind of woman capable of such elaborate, sustained deception. Or so he'd thought. He remembered her bouts of illness, times she'd stay in their guest room, claiming a terrible migraine or a stomach bug, insisting she needed to be alone. Were those periods related to a pregnancy? To childbirth? To caring for an infant? The timeline would fit, horrifyingly so. He recalled unexplained expenses on credit card statements he rarely scrutinized, cash withdrawals she'd vaguely attributed to household incidentals, or gifts for clients. Were those for Leo? There was a trip about 4.5 years ago, a solo wellness retreat she'd insisted she needed in a remote part of Northern California. She'd been gone for 2 weeks, came back looking tired, but, she'd claimed, rejuvenated. Was that when Leo was older, and she needed more dedicated time? Or was that a red herring, and the real deception was closer to home? The not having children, they'd tried for a couple of years. Doctor's visits, tests. The results had been inconclusive. Unexplained infertility on both sides, they'd been told, though slightly more leaning towards issues on his end. A low motility count that could be a factor. Chloe had seemed disappointed, but accepting. She'd suggested they stop trying, stop letting it define their marriage. He'd agreed, relieved to lift the pressure. Had she already had Leo by then? Or was she pregnant with him? The thought made him physically sick. Had their shared grief over their childlessness been a performance on her part? He tried to talk to Chloe again. He called, texted. She ignored. His calls and her text replies were terse, managed through her lawyer. All communication regarding Leo will be handled by Ms. Davies. He felt like he was screaming into a void. One evening, unable to bear the suffocating silence of their once-shared apartment, Liam found himself driving aimlessly. He ended up in front of the small suburban house belonging to Chloe's parents. He hadn't spoken to them since Chloe had announced she wanted a divorce, a sterile conversation that had left him feeling more alienated than ever. Did they know? Were they complicit in this grand deception? He almost rang the doorbell but stopped himself. What if they confirmed his worst fears? What if they too looked at him with that same cold, unreadable expression Chloe had perfected? He returned to his apartment, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. He couldn't eat, couldn't focus. His work suffered. His partners at the firm, David and Rachel, noticed. David, his oldest friend, finally cornered him. "Liam, what's going on, man?" David asked, his face etched with concern. "You look like hell. This divorce, it's hitting you harder than I thought. Or is there something else?" Liam hesitated. Part of him wanted to pour it all out, to share the insane burden. But shame held him back. How could he admit that he'd been so blind, so thoroughly duped? That his wife, the woman he'd shared his life with, had a secret child? It sounded like something out of a lurid soap opera. "It's complicated, David," Liam finally mumbled. "Complicated how?" David pressed gently. "Talk to me. Maybe I can help." And so, Liam told him. The words came out in a torrent, punctuated by disbelief and a raw, aching pain. David listened, his initial shock giving way to a quiet anger on Liam's behalf. "A 5-year-old son?" David breathed, shaking his head. "And she just drops it into a divorce proceeding? That's not just deceitful, Liam, that's cruel. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Liam confessed, his voice hoarse. "Jessica, my lawyer, says we need to verify the claim first. But I need to know who he is, David. I need to understand how this happened. I feel like I'm losing my mind." "Then you investigate," David said firmly. "You can't let her control this narrative. If she's hidden a child for 5 years, what else is she hiding? You need answers for your own sanity. Hire someone, Liam. A private investigator." A private investigator. The idea had crossed Liam's mind, but he'd dismissed it as too dramatic, too extreme. Now, hearing David say it, it seemed like the only logical step. He needed someone objective, someone skilled in uncovering secrets, to delve into the hidden corners of Chloe's life. The life she had so carefully and so cruelly concealed from him. The rupture of his marriage was one thing. The revelation of Leo had torn a hole through the very fabric of his past, his present, and his future. He had to find out, no matter how painful the truth might be. The decision to hire Marcus Thorne, a private investigator recommended by Jessica Albright, was a Rubicon Liam crossed with a heavy heart. Thorne was a man whose quiet demeanor and sharp, observant eyes hinted at a depth of experience in navigating the murky waters of human secrets. Liam laid out the bizarre situation, the 10-year marriage, the sudden divorce, and the bombshell request for custody of an unknown 5-year-old boy named Leo Hayes. Thorne listened impassively, taking sparse notes. "Mrs. Walker's maiden name was Hayes?" he asked. "Yes," Liam confirmed. "Chloe Hayes before we married." "And you have absolutely no knowledge of this child? No suspicions, no forgotten conversations, no unexplained long-term absences that might correlate with a pregnancy or early child care?" Liam recounted the wellness retreat, the late client meetings, the unexplained expenses. Each detail felt flimsy on its own, but woven together, they started to form a shadowy tapestry. "I was blind," Liam admitted, the shame still raw. "I trusted her." "Trust is often the first casualty in these matters, Mr. Walker," Thorne said, not unkindly. "All right, I'll start with surveillance on Mrs. Walker. Background checks, financial deep dives. We need to locate this child, first and foremost, and understand Mrs. Walker's connection to him. It could be anything from a straightforward, albeit hidden, biological child from an affair, to something more complex, an adoption she never disclosed, a ward, even a fabrication, though the custody request makes that less likely. The waiting was torture. Every day, Liam expected a call from Thorne with devastating news. He imagined Chloe meeting a secret lover, a handsome, smiling man, with a child who called him Daddy. He pictured a cozy little house somewhere, a parallel life running concurrently with the one she'd shared with him, making a mockery of everything he thought they'd had. He tried to focus on work, but plans blurred before his eyes. Client meetings felt like an out-of-body experience. His meticulously designed buildings, symbols of order and structure, seemed to mock his chaotic internal world. Thorne's initial reports were frustratingly mundane. Chloe followed a routine. Trips to a co-working space, grocery stores, occasional. Lunches with women Liam vaguely recognized as acquaintances. There was no sign of a child, no clandestine meetings with mysterious men. The financial trail was cleaner than Liam expected, at least on the surface. Most of her consultancy income went into a business account he had access to, though he rarely checked it. Thorne, however, was digging deeper into cash withdrawals and untraceable expenditures. Then, about 2 weeks into the investigation, Thorne called. "Mr. Walker, we might have something. Mrs. Walker has been making regular visits to a property in Oakhaven, about 40 minutes outside the city. It's a small, rented bungalow, not in her name. The lease is under a Jane Smith. She goes there 3 to 4 times a week, usually in the late afternoons, and stays for several hours, sometimes overnight, but she always returns to your former marital home before morning, or at least she has on the days we've had full surveillance. Oakhaven, a quiet, unassuming suburb. A child, Thorne? Did you see a child?" Liam's voice was tight. "Not yet, directly. The property has high fences, drawn curtains. But there are indications. A swing set in the backyard, barely visible from the road. Small, colorful toys sometimes left on the porch briefly. Yesterday, our operative caught a glimpse of a small handprint on a window pane, and Mrs. Walker was seen carrying in grocery bags that included children's cereal and juice. Boxes. Liam's blood ran cold. It was real. There was a child. Chloe's secret was starting to unravel, and each thread pulled tighter around Liam's heart. "I need to see it," Liam said, his voice resolute. "I need to see this place." Thorne advised against it. "It could compromise the investigation, Mr. Walker, and it could be emotionally damaging for you." "It's already damaging, Thorne," Liam retorted. "I need to understand. I won't interfere, I promise. I need to see where she goes, where this other life happens." Reluctantly, Thorne agreed. The next afternoon, Liam found himself parked down the street from the Oakhaven bungalow, his heart pounding. It was a nondescript little house, pale yellow siding, a slightly overgrown garden. It looked ordinary, deceptively so. He watched as Chloe's familiar silver SUV pulled into the driveway. She got out, carrying a couple of shopping bags, and hurried inside, a quick, furtive glance around before she disappeared through the door. Liam sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the house. What was happening inside those walls? Was Leo in there? Was he happy? Did he look like Chloe? Did he look like someone else? The questions gnawed at him. He saw lights flick on as dusk settled. He saw a shadow pass a window, too small to be Chloe's. A child's shadow. The tension was becoming unbearable. Liam felt himself on the precipice of a breakdown. His lawyer, Jessica, urged caution. "Liam, whatever you discover, we need to handle it strategically. If she has hidden a child, it raises serious questions about her fitness for any kind of custody, let alone her character and truthfulness in these proceedings." A few days later, Thorne called again, his voice different, tinged with something Liam couldn't quite decipher. "Mr. Walker, I think you need to come to my office. We've identified the child, and the situation is not what we initially assumed." "Not what they assumed? What could be worse than his wife having a secret child from an affair? Liam drove to Thorne's office, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. Thorne's office was small, functional. He gestured for Liam to sit, then slid a file across the desk. Leo Hayes. He exists. He's 5 years old. Registered as homeschooled. We managed to get a photograph. He pushed a slightly grainy long lens shot towards Liam. Liam picked it up, his hand trembling. It was a picture of a small boy with a mop of sandy brown hair and wide, serious blue eyes, sitting on the steps of the Oakhaven bungalow, meticulously lining up toy cars. He was small for his age, with a delicate, almost fragile air about him. Liam scanned the child's features, searching for a resemblance to Chloe, or to some imagined lover. The boy's eyes. They were a striking shade of blue, a shade Liam didn't recognize. "He doesn't look much like Chloe," Liam murmured, more to himself than to Thorne. "No, he doesn't," Thorne agreed, "because he's not her biological son, Mr. Walker." Liam's head snapped up. "What? Then who is he? Did she adopt him secretly?" Thorne leaned forward. "This is where it gets complicated. Leo Hayes is the biological son of a woman named Sarah Hayes. Sarah was Chloe Walker's younger sister." "Chloe's sister?" Liam was stunned. He knew Chloe had a sister, Sarah. She was estranged from the family, had been for years. Chloe rarely spoke of her, and when she did, it was with a mixture of sadness and frustration. Sarah was the black sheep, the one who'd run off, got involved with a bad crowd, Chloe had once vaguely explained. He'd met Sarah only once, fleetingly, at a family gathering years ago, before she'd completely dropped off the map. He remembered a wild-eyed, restless young woman. Sarah? Liam struggled to process this. "So Leo is Chloe's nephew?" "Correct," Thorne said. "According to the birth certificate, Sarah Hayes is the mother. The father is listed as unknown. So, Chloe is trying to get custody of her nephew? Why all the secrecy? Why not just tell me her sister had a child and she was helping out?" Liam was bewildered. This didn't feel like the devastating betrayal of an affair, but it was still a monumental deception. "Because," Thorne continued, his voice grave, "Sarah Hayes died 3 years ago, Mr. Walker. Drug overdose." The words hit Liam like a punch to the gut. Sarah was dead. This poor little boy, Leo, had lost his mother. "And that's not all," Thorne said, holding up a hand as Liam started to speak. "Before she died, Sarah Hayes was involved with a rather dangerous group. Some would call it a cult. They call themselves the Family of the New Dawn. They live communally, reject mainstream society, and have a very tight grip on their members. Sarah had Leo while she was with them. After Sarah's death, the cult effectively claimed Leo." Chamonix 2 cult. Liam felt like he'd stepped into a surreal nightmare. "So, Chloe? Our working theory," Thorne said, "is that Chloe Walker somehow managed to get Leo away from this cult. The Jane Smith alias for the lease, the high fences, the secrecy. It suggests she's been hiding him. Not just from you, Mr. Walker, but from them. This group is known for being persistent when they believe someone belongs to them, or if they believe someone has taken something that is theirs. Like a child they consider part of their family. Liam stared at the photograph of the little boy with the serious blue eyes. His world had just been upended, again, but in a completely different, more terrifying way. Chloe hadn't betrayed him with another man. She had been engaged in a desperate secret battle to protect her orphaned nephew from a dangerous cult, living a clandestine life under the constant threat of discovery. Her second parallel life wasn't one of infidelity, but one of fierce, covert protection. The divorce, the sudden custody claim for Leo, it wasn't a malicious act against Liam. It was, he was starting to realize with dawning shock, a desperate attempt to legitimize her care for Leo, to give him some semblance of a normal, legal existence, even if it meant blowing up her own life and marriage in the process. The plot twist wasn't just unexpected. It recast everything he thought he knew about Chloe, about her secrets, and about the very nature of her betrayal. The revelation that Leo was Chloe's nephew, rescued from a dangerous cult after the tragic death of her estranged sister, sent Liam reeling. The anger and bitterness that had consumed him for weeks began to morph into a complex cocktail of shock, confusion, and a reluctant, dawning empathy. Chloe's deception was still a staggering blow. The fact that she hadn't trusted him with this monumental secret cut him to the core. Yet, the image of her battling a shadowy cult to protect a vulnerable child painted a picture not of a cold, calculating adulteress, but of a woman driven to desperate measures by love and fear. Liam sat in Thorne's office, the photograph of Leo still in his hand. The boy's serious blue eyes seemed to stare right through him. "Why didn't she tell me?" he finally whispered. They questioned more an expression of pain than an expectation of an answer from Thorne. "We were married. This is something we should have faced together." "People do inexplicable things when they're terrified, Mr. Walker," Thorne said quietly, "especially when a child's safety is at stake. She might have feared implicating you, feared you wouldn't understand, or wouldn't agree with the risks she was taking. Or perhaps she feared that if the cult ever found Leo, you too would become a target." The thought that Chloe might have been trying to protect him, in her own convoluted and secretive way, was a strange and unsettling one. It didn't excuse the years of lies, the emotional chasm she had allowed to grow between them, but it did reframe her actions. Jessica Albright, when Liam relayed Thorne's findings, was equally stunned. "A cult?" she'd exclaimed. "This changes the complexion of the custody petition significantly. If Chloe can prove Leo is in danger, or that she rescued him from a harmful environment, her actions, while highly unorthodox and deceitful towards you, might be viewed more sympathetically by a family court, especially if she's seeking to provide him with stability and safety." Jessica paused. "The question is, Liam, what do you want to do now?" What did he want to do? The divorce was inevitable. Too much trust had been irrevocably shattered. He couldn't imagine going back to the marriage they had, not after this chasm of secrecy had been exposed. But Leo was an innocent child, caught in an unimaginable situation. He needed to talk to Chloe. Not in a sterile solicitor's office, not through intermediaries, but face to face. He drove to the Oak Haven bungalow that evening, his heart a tumultuous mix of apprehension and a strange sort of resolve. He parked down the street and walked up to the little yellow house, the house that had become the symbol of Chloe's secret life. He rang the doorbell. After a moment, Chloe opened it. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him, then narrowed, with suspicion and fear. She instinctively tried to block his view of the interior. "Liam," she said, her voice low and urgent. "What are you doing here? You can't be here." "I know about Leo, Chloe," he said quietly, his gaze steady. "I know he's Sarah's son. I know about the cult." The color drained from Chloe's face. She sagged against the doorframe, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Tears welled in her eyes. How did you find out?" "I hired an investigator," he admitted. "I had to understand what was happening, Chloe. Why you would list a child I'd never heard of in our divorce papers." She stared at him, a mixture of defeat and a strange, flickering hope in her eyes. Can we talk? Please come in, but quietly." He stepped inside. The bungalow was small, modestly furnished, but clean and filled with a child's presence. Colorful drawings were taped to the refrigerator, a worn teddy bear sat on the sofa, a half-finished Lego creation lay on the coffee table. And then he saw him. Leo. Peeking shyly from behind a doorway, his serious blue eyes fixed on Liam with a child's open curiosity. He was smaller than Liam had imagined from the photograph, and there was a vulnerability about him that tugged at something. Deep inside Liam. "Leo, sweetie, this is a friend of Mommy's," Chloe said, her voice a little shaky. "This is Liam. Can you say hello?" Leo ducked his head, then gave a small, almost imperceptible wave. "Go play in your room for a little while, okay?" "Mommy needs to talk to Liam," Chloe said gently. Leo nodded and disappeared. Once the child was out of earshot, Chloe turned back to Liam, her face etched with exhaustion and years of pent-up fear. And then the story poured out of her. She told him about Sarah's descent into the cult, her increasingly erratic behavior, her desperate, sporadic calls. She recounted the chilling news of Sarah's death and her own terrifying decision to get Leo out. "They saw him as property, Liam," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "Sarah was brainwashed, but she loved Leo. In one of her last coherent calls, she begged me, if anything happened to her, to get him out, not to let them keep him. After she died, I went there. I pretended I wanted to join, to be close to Sarah's memory, to Leo. It took months to gain enough of their trust to be alone with him for more than a few minutes. And then, one night, I took him. I ran. I've been looking over my shoulder ever since." She explained the Jane Smith identity, the constant moving in the early days until she found the Oak Haven bungalow, the fear that kept her from going to the police or social services, terrified the cult's reach was longer than she knew, or that Leo would be lost in a bureaucratic system that wouldn't understand the specific danger he was in. "I was so scared, Liam," she wept, the tears flowing freely now. "Scared for him, scared of them. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag you into it. It wasn't your burden. And I was ashamed, too. Ashamed of Sarah. Ashamed of my family. Ashamed that I was living this lie. And the divorce? Claiming custody of Leo like that? Liam asked, his voice softer now. I was running out of options, Chloe explained, her hands twisting in her lap. He needs to go to school, see a doctor without me looking over my shoulder, have a normal life. I thought if I could get legal custody through the divorce, establish him as my dependent legally, it would offer some protection. It was a desperate move. I knew it would destroy us, what was left of us, but I had to try. For Leo, Liam listened, the pieces falling into place, forming a picture that was both heartbreaking and heroic. The woman he thought had betrayed him, with cold indifference, had actually been waging a silent, lonely war. The years of her increasing distance, her unexplained absences, they weren't signs of a waning love for him, but symptoms of the immense, terrifying secret she was carrying. "Chloe," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "You should have told me. We were partners. I would have helped you. We could have protected him together." Her eyes met his, filled with a deep, profound regret. "I know that now, Liam. Or at least I hope it would have been true. But at the time I felt so alone, so trapped. I made a choice, a terrible one, in how it affected you. But I would do it again to keep him safe." Liam looked towards the room where Leo was playing. An innocent child, his life already so marked by tragedy and fear. The anger Liam had felt for Chloe had largely dissipated, replaced by a heavy sadness for the marriage that was lost, for the years of shared life they could never get back, but also by a grudging admiration for her fierce maternal instinct, even if it was for her nephew. The divorce proceeded, but its nature changed. Liam, through Jessica Albright, did not contest Chloe's petition for custody of Leo. Instead, he offered his support. He provided a sworn affidavit detailing what he had learned, corroborating Chloe's story about her efforts to protect Leo. His architectural firm had connections, and he quietly helped find a child psychologist specializing in trauma, and a family lawyer who specialized in complex custodial cases involving at-risk children. It wasn't a reconciliation. The trust, in its purest marital form, was gone. The life they had shared was over, but in its place, a new, fragile understanding began to form. Liam found himself visiting Leo, at first awkwardly, then with a growing sense of affection. The boy was shy, but slowly warmed to Liam's quiet presence, his patient attempts to engage him in building Lego castles or drawing fantastical creatures. Liam saw so much of Chloe's quiet strength in Leo, and a resilience that humbled him. The court eventually granted Chloe sole legal custody of Leo, largely thanks to the evidence of the cult's dangerous nature and Chloe's consistent care. The threat from the family of the New Dawn still lingered, a shadow in the background. But with legal standing, Chloe could now access resources and protections she couldn't before. She even started working with authorities to monitor the cult's Tufi activities. Liam moved on. He sold the apartment they had shared, a place now too filled with ghosts of both happy memories and painful revelations. He focused on his work, finding solace in the clean lines and solid structures he created. The pain of Chloe's initial perceived betrayal faded, leaving behind the more complex ache of what might have been, and an understanding of the incredible. burdens people could carry in secret. Sometimes he would see Chloe and Leo at a park, or for a casual weekend brunch. There was a new openness in Chloe's eyes, a lightness that hadn't been there for years. She was still guarded, but the crushing weight of her secret life had lifted. Leo, too, was thriving. He was starting to laugh more, to trust more easily. He even started calling Liam Uncle Liam, a title Liam accepted with a quiet sense of honor. Liam's journey had started with a bewildering, painful rupture, fueled by a shocking revelation. He had navigated a maelstrom of emotional conflict, uncovering a truth far stranger and more compelling than he could have ever imagined. The plot twist hadn't just been about Chloe's secret, but about the depths of her character, her fierce love for her nephew, and in the end, Liam found his own path to overcoming. He hadn't salvaged his marriage, but he had salvaged his compassion, his ability to understand, and even to forgive in his own way. He had lost a wife, but he had gained an insight into the extraordinary, hidden battles people fight. And in Leo, he had found an unexpected, poignant connection to a future he hadn't envisioned, a testament to the surprising ways life can reshape itself after the storm. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. It truly helps the channel. Click the video on screen, and I'll see you there.